Hey there everybody, and welcome to another day of solving equations with roots. So today we're going to be solving equations that get a little bit more complicated. I have some notes here for you. Solving these equations is a lot like solving any other equation. First you have to get that variable by itself. From there you use square or cube roots to determine the solution. And speaking of those, I've got a couple warm-ups here for you. So let's look at this first warm-up. This is like what you just learned yesterday or the day before. We have x squared equals 25. So how do we solve for x when you have x squared equals 25? Well, you're going to take the square root of both sides. So as you know, what you do to one side, you do to the other so that the equation stays balanced. And when you take the square root of something that is squared, those two things essentially cancel each other out. So the squared goes away and you're left with just x equals square root of 25. Now let's solve the square root of 25. I'm going to show you all kinds of different devices today. I'm going to do problems on the calculator. I'm going to do problems on an iPhone calculator. I'm also going to do problems using our Desmos scientific calculator. So I'll kind of be rotating through those three. So first up, let's just use this calculator. But if it's not what you have, like I said, I'll show you different devices later. Okay, so for square root, we are doing this blue button here, so you do second and then right here, and then you're just going to write 25, and that's going to give you 5. Now the calculator is always going to give you the positive version of these square roots, but you know that it could be positive or it could be negative, because 5 times 5 equals 25, but negative 5 times negative 5 also equals 25. So your answer is going to be positive or negative 5. Okay, so you have two answers there, positive 5 and negative 5. You could also write it like this, 5 or negative 5. That works as well. A lot of times on our quizzes, we're asking you to write it this way. All right, so that's the solution to warm-up number 1. Let's look at warm-up number 2. Y cubed equals negative 27. All right, so for this one, and if you were doing it on the calculator, you would use this button right here. Let's clear that out. You would use this button right here. You would do a 3, and then second, then this button. And do you see how that 3 was big and it just got smaller? Here, I'm going to show you one more time because this is important. You're going to do the 3, and then when you push the right button, that 3 becomes smaller. Now it is officially the cube root, and that's what you want. Cube root of negative 27. So you're going to put that whole thing in there, and it gives you the answer, negative 3. There's no positive or negative version here. You just answer it as negative 3. So I kind of skipped over a step here. Because it's cube root and because the y is cubed, you're going to take the cube root in order to solve for y. So what you do there is the cube root of both sides. I had a little white out here, so that looks a little funky there. But when you have something cubed, you take the cube root of both sides, then that cancels that out and you're just left with the variable and then whatever the answer is over here. And we'll do more of that down below. Let's look at how to do a cube root on an iPhone though really quick. So this calculator is not going to have anything on it that helps you, but if you tilt it, make sure you unlock your phone first, because at least on my phone it doesn't work unless it's unlocked. So here for cube root of negative 27, what I would do is I would write negative 27. Okay, now it's negative. And now I'm going to take this button over here where it says cube root of x and just punch it and you get negative 3. I encourage you to be careful and make sure you're using the negative button on these devices. That includes your calculator. Make sure you use the negative button, not the minus button, because sometimes that can throw it off with these things. Okay, I'll show you the Desmos online calculator in just a second, but we've solved the warm-up, so let's go on to our example number 1. All right, so as it says up here, you have to get the variable by itself. So we want to get the x squared by itself, which means we have to get rid of that 3. So divide by your 3 on both sides. You're left with x squared equals 16. Feel free to use a calculator for that right there. So now to find what x is equal to, you're going to square root both sides. How do I know to square root it? Because that exponent is a 2. If the exponent is 2, you want to square root both sides. Okay, so the square root is going to make that exponent go away, and you're going to be left with x equals square root of 16. What if we don't know what the square root of 16 is? Well, you could use, let's use your iPhone calculator again. If you have an iPhone, this is helpful. So let me clear that out. You're going to put 16 And then you're going to hit the square root button. That's the one with the little 2 up on the little shelf right there. And it's going to tell you 4. Now, like I said earlier, the calculator is only going to give you the positive version because that's the convention. That's what it does. But you know that it could be positive 4 or negative 4. You can write it like that, or you can write it like this, positive, negative 4. All right, so that's your answer there. Let's do example 2. This time I'll show you the Desmos calculator. But before we get to that part, we need to get that y cubed by itself. Right now we have y cubed divided by 4 equals 16. To get rid of the 4, let's multiply by 4 on both sides. And that is going to cancel. You're going to be left with y cubed equals, well, I think it's 64, but let's be sure. 16 times 4, 64. Okay. So now what is your exponent? It's a 3. So when it's a 3, how do you get rid of that? That's right, you take the cube root. Take the cube root of both sides, and this is going to cancel out that exponent. And over here, let's figure out what the cube root of 64 is. Let me grab that Desmos calculator. Okay, I've got it on my laptop here. Hopefully you can see that okay. So we're doing the cube root of 64. So for cube root, you're going to choose this function right here where it's n and then the little radical sign. So punch that. And then you see how the cursor is up here? That's where you want to enter your 3. So go ahead and do that. And then you're going to have to use the arrow key or your cursor button or your mouse or whatever to get under the radical sign, and then you're going to enter 64 there. And your answer's over here. It looks like the cube root of 64 is equal to 4. So that's how you do that. So we know that y is equal to 4. With cube roots, you're only going to have one answer, so you don't have to worry about positive and negative. Let's go on to example 3. This time we have p squared minus 8 equals 10. What's step 1? Step 1 is to get that p by itself. All right, so let's get rid of that minus 8 by adding 8 to both sides. You're going to be left with p squared equals 18. Now when your exponent is a 2, how do you get rid of it? You take the square root. Good. So we're going to square root both sides because what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. That's going to cancel out your exponent for you. You're going to be left with p equals the square root of 18, whatever that is. Let's use our Desmos calculator again to find out. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this. For square root, as you might guess, it's just going to be this one where there's nothing on the little shelf. And so you've got that. And then our number was 18. You can use your keypad or you can just click the numbers here. And then the answer is coming up over here. It looks like it's a pretty long decimal. Let's just keep the first 2 places. So we're going to keep the 100th place. So 4.24 is going to be our answer there. P equals 4.24. Now I left myself a little space right there because remember, the calculator gives us only the positive version with the square roots, but we know that it might be positive or it might be negative. So we have to add our little symbol here. Or you could write it out with the or like we did up there. That would be p equals 4.24 or negative 4.24. Okay, let's go on to example 4. G cubed plus 7 equals 15. Okay, we need that g cubed by itself, so let's get rid of the 7 by subtracting it from both sides. That goes to 0. You're left with g cubed equals, let's see, 15 minus 7 is 8. So we need to figure out what the cube root of 8 is. Let's use this calculator again. So I'm going to do my 3 first, and then I'm going to hit this button, and my 3 got small, perfect. And now I'm going to put 8 under the radical sign, and it tells me 2. So g is equal to 2, and that's your final answer there. Okay, we got a couple more for you, and then I'll turn you loose on that assignment. Negative 7 times n cubed equals 3,584. Well, we got to get rid of that negative 7 because we need to get the n by itself. So right now it's multiplying. Let's get rid of it by dividing. And we'll divide it on both sides. So that will cancel out, essentially turn into a 1. So n cubed is going to be equal to whatever this is. Let's find out. 3,584 divided by negative 7, negative 512. All right, so let's find the cube root of negative 512. So I'm going to hit 3 first, And I'm going to watch the 3 get small. Okay, that looks good. Now here I'm going to show you what happens if you do the minus button instead of the negative. So I'm going to push the minus button right here. This is not what you're supposed to do. And then write 512 and then hit enter. Syntax error. Oh my gosh. Well, that's because we hit the minus button instead of the negative. Let's try it again. So let's just clear it all out. 3. Okay, cube root of, this time we're going to do negative 512. And this time we get -8, which is a good answer. That is correct. And we'll just write it down. Okay, one more example for you. On example 6, we have x squared plus 12 equals 5. So we need that x squared by itself, don't we? So let's subtract 12 from both sides. That goes to 0, and you're left with x squared equals, let's see, 5 minus 12. It's going to be -7. Now, you might be looking at that thinking, wait a second, a number squared cannot equal a negative number. That's true. Can you take a square root of a negative number? No, you can't. And what happens if you try? Let's try. Square root of -7, this is going to tell me domain error. And that's just a nice way of telling you that there is no solution here because there is no way to take the square root of a negative number. Well, I say no way. Not this year, maybe in a couple of years. You guys hang on for secondary math too. But for now, we're just going to write no solution. Okay, thanks so much for watching. If you have questions, let your teacher know. We'd love to hear from you. Bye.